Hey everybody, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I'm your host G1 as always. Hope you're having a good week. It's been a great one for me. Good news on a personal level that takes a lot of stress off of me and the wife, which is very welcome and timely. Not a new job unfortunately, but still some very good news. That's all I really can say about it for now, but it's good, and that means that I've been in a really good mood all week and paying close attention to all the news events going on around us, which makes putting the show together that much easier. So, what do I have on the list for you lovely people today? Well, let's get into the whole ICE protest business and the reaction from the Trump administration. As you all probably know, the protests have been taking place mainly in Chicago and Portland. Portland seems to be just a constant state of protest over something. Those people are never satisfied about anything all the time, so it's just kind of par for the course for them. Chicago, well, there is so much violence there that, well, having the focus on ICE is probably a nice change of pace for the locals. So, they're probably just happy to see something different going on. Anyway, I've touched on this topic over the last few weeks already, but we've had some big moves this week that we need to get into because some things happen that signal an escalation. And we're all about tracking the escalations around here. And that is not to say that when things escalate, they stay in that state of affairs, but think of it as kind of pushing the limits, and then things have mostly kind of settled back to a point. It's not a point that is where it was before the escalation, but it's something. Think of it like 5 steps forwards and then 3 steps back, if you follow me there. And that's just kind of how things go when chaos is at work. So we have seen this incremental escalation of things going on for a long time, and now we are at the point where we've had literal attacks on federal ICE agents. And no time are the left or the mass media condemning these attacks. They're mostly in favor of them, but what they're doing publicly is they're taking the position that, well, these attacks are terrible, but if it were not for the extreme actions of Donald Trump, the people would not be in a position where they feel like they need to commit these acts. Which is the same as to say, they love you, but you made them smack you across the face and give you a black eye. If you were not so bad, they wouldn't get so angry at you. Yeah, it's victim blaming from the left and the media, none of which is surprising at all, in the least. We know that if you scratch a liberal leftist, there's a commie revolutionary just below the surface. They have no issue ramping up their actions to violence in incremental levels for the most mundane reasons. It's just par for their course. It's in their blood. It's their nature. But let's do a quick contrast to the response for January 6th or the Bundy Ranch or the Oregon Wildlife Sanctuary. The same people involved with those responses are now complaining, that are not saying anything. They're complaining about ICE. They're not saying anything about the people trying to hurt ICE. The people involved with those protest actions at Bundy Ranch, Oregon Sanctuary, all those, they were painted as the most horrible villains. They're on the same level as the Confederates and their treasonous actions. How dare they? How dare they stand up to the will of the people, the will of the left? So it's a double standard. We all know that. Just take a look this week at the arrest of James Comey. Oh, that's right. You really haven't seen much about that, have you? Has anyone seen a mugshot of James Comey yet? Plastered all over the media? Was there a perp walk of James Comey? Did the FBI raid his house at 5 a.m. with Fox News standing outside, film him in his underwear being put in a car? No, none of that happened. Comey was allowed to turn himself in at leisure, and his mugshot has not been released to the public, or at least if it has, no one's posted it yet. I haven't seen it. But it must be because of, the dignity of his former position as head of the FBI. That needs to be respected. He's not like, the President of the United States or something, whose mugshot was plastered all over the media, every place you could post something like that. You couldn't avoid seeing Trump's mugshot. It's also tiresome, and I'm honestly just fed up with that double standard. I'm fed up with the way that the right conducts itself when it's in a position of power. I've spoken on this before. When the right is in power, they do everything they can to avoid being called, Nazis or fascists or, whatever. It's any kind of action that might be construed as authoritarian is just avoided like the plague. Well, you see how that's been working out for you. You just keep getting called that for everything that you do. And it's been done so vagrantly now that no one really knows what those words even mean anymore, because the definitions have been wallowed out like a sorority girl on a big game weekend. They're meaningless. So just do it. And if you pay attention right now, the president may in fact be coming to the same conclusion, because he's ordered National Guard troops to be deployed in Chicago and to Portland. Now, of course, immediately his orders are opposed in court. Some female judge throws up her hands like Timu Gandalf and says, you can't do that, you can't pass. Well, last time I looked, his title is Commander-in-Chief over the armed forces, and it's pretty established law and precedent that the president, in fact, does have the power to deploy troops on U.S. soil to establish law and order. It's been done a whole bunch of times. And judges don't have the authority or jurisdiction to stop the president from doing that. Congress does. But the judicial branch, they don't have the power to do that. So the judge was quickly slapped down. But the troops have yet to hit the streets in those two cities. They're there. They're poised to be deployed, tactically, I guess. But they're on scene. And I think they're being held back at this point because something interesting has happened. The local police in both locations have suddenly taken on more of a role in establishing order. Imagine that. In Chicago, where, by the way, this past weekend we had 2 immigrants follow an ICE vehicle and ram that vehicle with their cars, and then engage in a shootout with the ICE agents. At least they were shot at. They had firearms. It looks like ICE got out and just blasted them. More about that in a second. Chicago, over the weekend, we saw State Patrol and local PD coming out and opening up the streets outside of the ICE facility. See, the main issue here, the big problem, it's not that people are out there protesting. Nobody's saying they can't protest. It's how they're protesting, what they are doing. They've been blocking the streets and preventing, or at least trying to prevent, the ICE vans and SUVs and the trucks from entering and exiting these facilities. And they believe that somehow this will prevent ICE from arresting people. Spoiler alert, it has not. ICE has been sending out agents the entire time. And so they're forced to send out these, riot-clad troops, these armed and armored guys, to use crowd control techniques to open these roads and allow the vehicles to pass. And until this week, local and state PD have been completely absent from that in these 2 locations. They've been told to stand down. They've been told that they legally can't support ICE or do anything to help ICE. Nothing. They can't assist in keeping these roads open. All that was expected of them, by the way, was to keep the protesters on the sidewalks and out of the roads so that operations could continue. They were not being asked to go out on ICE raids. I mean, that really wasn't. It was the minimum level of effort here. And they couldn't be bothered to do that. They were being prevented from doing that by their political leadership. Well, now in Chicago, at least, and at least this weekend in Chicago, and over the last couple of nights in Portland, those local PD, state police, they're out doing their job. Portland PD began to patrol the blocks right around the ICE facility over the last week. In Chicago, they've opened the roads, they've pushed the protesters back. Hey, here are these barriers. You can protest, but you got to be back on the sidewalk behind these barriers. You cannot get out in the street and block the vehicles. So Portland sends out their local PD to finally start taking some kind of actions. But they show up in force at the beginning of this. They show up in force a couple of times, but only to arrest 2 conservative YouTubers who are down there. They arrest them for disturbing the peace. Now, you might have seen one of these guys kind of appear on, like Tucker Carlson, and one of them was the catalyst for Pam Bondi to start sending some letters and saying, hey, I'm going to come down there and look at what's going on. But you probably didn't see much about the other one, the second guy. Charges have been dropped, I believe, on both of them. I know on the one that kind of got some national attention. But the one guy, the other guy that you probably didn't see, he was arrested for being the victim of an assault. He was attacked. He fought back. And the PD shows up and arrests him. Now, I don't have any idea if his charges are still pending, but he was released that very same night. He was back the very next day out on the street that night filming them, and not gonna sugarcoat it. He's agitating them. No question about that. Nothing illegal. Should have never been arrested for being attacked. The guy that punched him, he didn't get arrested. But the last 2 nights in Portland have been very quiet. Portland PD came in, they dismantled the Antifa camp that was right down the block from ICE, and they've pushed the protesters back with this kind of line of barrels and caution tape and whatnot. They pushed them back about a block away in all directions from the building. So now they're down the street, the protesters, and they're not getting the attention that they want. So the crowd's kind of thinned out a little bit. Now, I suspect that it will grow again this weekend, as that tends to be the trend. It kind of tapers off a little bit through the week, and then it comes back a little bit on the weekend. It gets a little bit more rowdy. But we shall see if Portland PD is around to prevent them from, breaking that barrier and getting back up next to the building. Or perhaps the president does say enough is enough and puts the National Guard on set and puts an end to the whole thing. But it's funny how when the president steps up and moves to, end the games, well, suddenly the games at least shift focus and the lawlessness in the streets comes to an end. It's funny how that works. And I say shift focus because we're also seeing the insurrection, and yeah, I'm going to use that word since they got so fond of it. The insurrection has moved into the courts. As I said, the right-wing YouTubers were the only ones in Portland that the Portland PD arrested. But at least their charges have been dropped, likely because of those threats from Pam Bondi and the DOJ. Again, it's funny how that works out when higher level leadership starts putting a little pressure on things. But in Chicago, the 2 criminals who rammed the ICE vehicle, Well, since they had no criminal history, the judge just says, well, I'm going to allow them to post bond and release them. Now, one of them happens to have 5 bullet wounds in her, so I don't think she's going to be doing much. But the male, the guy, he's free to go back to harassing the ICE agents in the field. Back out on the streets. This is the same environment, although it's much less of an outrage, as the release of the criminal psychotic man who stabbed a young boy in the head a few years ago, killed him in his own bed. Terrible. Yeah, that lunatic has also been released from jail this week by a judge after spending, 4 years in prison or so. So if you walk around the Capitol building during a protest, you get locked up, denied bail, denied a trial for 4 years, and you're only released because the president pardons you. But if you break into a home in the middle of the night and attack 2 toddlers in their room and stab one of them to death, well, you get to go free in that same 4 years. There's no justice in this land. Our government is occupied from stem to stern with people who hate you and want you dead. And they are supported by your neighbors, at least in the suburbs and the big cities. And those people will happily turn the police power of government on you and your family when they are in power, and they do not care one iota what the government does to you. They want you gone from their presence because they believe that the only path to their ideal utopia, their fantasy, is blocked by your presence. If you just weren't here, it would all be great. And the irony of it all is that if it were not for them and their presence and their fantastical ideas and philosophies, we would have an idyllic society. It's objective fact. It's objective, proven time and time again. But of course, over the centuries, the examples of that, all of those places that were idyllic, have been attacked and destroyed by the very same ideas and philosophies. It's not in their nature to leave well enough alone. They have to meddle and scheme and connive. It is destructive. They're like the human equivalent of entropy. I believe, however, that more and more people are beginning to see the reality. They are starting to open their minds to the facts that are smashing them right in the face, that this cannot continue, and it will not continue. There will be a stop to it, one way or the other. There will be a stop to it. And the only question is how much damage is going to be done during that process. You're going to need to make some harsh choices in the very near future. You're going to be faced with this. You're going to be in a position that you will have to determine what you want to deal with. The specter of a civil war has been out there for some time now, and many of us have been saying this for a long time, and so long that we've grown to doubt ourselves. Okay, I've certainly been in that position. I've accepted the possibility that I could be a boy who cried wolf. I probably have been a long time. Over the years, I've said, hey, this could be the thing, and it's not been the thing. But I don't think that specter ever really went away. It's always been out there. It just wasn't obvious all the time. It certainly wasn't obvious enough that people gave it attention. The attention that it deserves. But now it is obvious, and it's mainstream. And big-name mainstream people are starting to ask, is this really possible? More than possible, is it likely? Are we on the road that we can't turn away from? Could this really happen again on American soil? When people are asking that, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to go into a civil war? Or am I willing to deal with the other side calling me evil while we do what is necessary to fix this problem? And what is necessary may be actions that make you question what we're doing. They may be things that look really bad. They may be things that look like the ideal United States that you grew up in is no longer there. Well, it isn't. This isn't the country that you grew up in. Some of these actions may even, in fact, be later on deemed to be illegal. But I think you have to come to the realization that the rot is so deep that there may not be a legal way to work it out. Our system was not designed to deal with this. But this rot, it's there. It's persistent. It will always cover for itself, and it will allow the guilty to go unpunished. And that may be something that you have to accept as well. Some of the people who did this, that are responsible for this, they may get away with it. They may not face a punishment. It's just unfortunate. It's just the way that things work out sometimes. So what say you? Are you willing to do some harsh things that may look bad, that may look really evil in some ways? They may harm a small number of people? Or are you willing to have the country descend into open warfare where millions of people might suffer and be harmed? And that is a terrible, terrible weight of decision. But it may be our reality. Now that is all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab. Nice crew and the new home of Western rifle shooters. I've posted the new link in the description. So go visit the new page. Soak it up on a daily basis. And we will see you on the next episode.